Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Chris Hammond. We talk about retirement issues and everything that pertains to that. And today we're going to specifically talk about the three retirement spending phases. You got these three periods called the go-go years. That's your first years in retirement. You have the slow-go years. Those are the later on years, but not quite to the last stage, which is the no-go years, which is where you are probably not in the best of health and you're probably not doing much going around just health wise. There's limitations that have happened. Now, this is important to think about because traditionally in financial planning, the kind of the traditional way that this is done is when you're looking at retiring, one way that you can look at it is to say, today I spend X amount of dollars, and I just need to put a 3% inflation on that. And over the years, it's going to go up like this really smooth line like that. There's nothing wrong with doing that in a financial plan because at least the planning is taking place. You're looking at things going forward. But the reality is that life never works in a smooth line like that. And even when you're trying to put an inflation growth rate on your spending over time, life doesn't work like that. If you think just here in recent history, as of filming this, it's 2023, and you think about, we went through a long period of time where we didn't have really much inflation occurring, and then all of a sudden inflation was like 8% one year, and then getting down, it's getting lower now from that peak, but it wasn't just like this smooth 3% every year that happened. No more than an investment portfolio of stocks and bonds is going to grow under a smooth. Everything always moves. That's how life works. So there's nothing wrong with having a plan together where you're doing that, as long as you work with somebody where you're revisiting that plan all the time. But what's important about kind of understanding this reality of the different phases that people go through in life is that it can help you feel more comfortable with some of the spending decisions that you might make during the different years. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we go through there. So let's kind of break down a little bit about what each phase is. So the go-go years would be, it could be, it's not exactly, it doesn't have to be the first 5 or 10 years. It might be longer than that, might be shorter than that for you. It depends. But these are the years where you're physically at your most fit, you're mentally your sharpest in retirement at this early phase. The hobbies that you do are going to be more active type of hobbies. You're probably going to want to do more frequent travel. You've been working the 9 to 5. You're finally out of it. You're tasting freedom. You're ready to go. It's like a girls just want to have fun time and really enjoy your life is what it is. And you might do some more frequent traveling. Your discretionary spending of things that you're going to do that are not your essentials, like the essentials are like paying your property taxes, utilities, grocery bill, but your discretionary things, the fun things, taking the grandkids to Disney World, all that kind of stuff, is probably going to be highest during those early years of your retirement. The go-go years is what they are called. Now, the next phase is the no-go or the slow-go years. And that's just roughly, the next 5 to 10 years after the go-go years. Your physical health is probably still going to be good at that time, but the hobbies that you want to do are probably going to be less strenuous. You're probably not going to be as much into playing pickleball at that time, but you're going to be playing more canasta card games, things like that, for example. And these are generics. I don't want to pigeonhole any of you guys. I know everybody's an individual, but you get the idea. Extended travel is probably less likely. You're going to be one of those people who says, I want to sleep in my own bed. I'm 42. I already feel that way myself. I like to sleep in my own bed. And what's going to happen is your discretionary spending is probably going to decline during this year. Okay. So that leads you on to the next one, which is the no-go years. These would be like your final 5 to 10 years of retirement. Well, let's go ahead and say it. Final 5 to 10 years of your life, really. This is the time where your physical and mental health have probably degraded much more at this point. Travel may not even be possible. You may require some type of living assistance. Discretionary spending might not really be all that high, but your medical expenses could increase substantially at this time. So what could happen is that, and you just think about things like assisted living, the expense that's associated with that, nursing home, for instance, if you had somebody had to come and stay in the home, those spending expenses can be pretty high in the no-go years, even though you're not going out and doing the fun things that you want. So what happens is that, and just going back a few slides to look at this overview here, it's almost like a U shape. So think about the letter U, and it starts up high, and then it gets lower, and then it goes back up high again. Well, that's kind of how the pattern plays out with this. The go-go years, your spending is higher, you're doing the fun things that you want, and then as the slow-go years come, your health is still good. Maybe you're not spending a lot on medical care at that point, so and your discretionary spending is probably going down too. But then the no-go years come along, and even though you're not doing the fun things and spending money on travel, you might be spending money on more of the medical things right there. Now, the reason this is important, the kind of the takeaways that you can get from this is that it's good to understand how your spending changes can play out over what really could be a multi-decade long retirement plan. So if you're looking to retire, there's nothing wrong with kind of taking that baseline. I spend this much now, I'm just going to estimate a 3% increase in my expenses going forward. That kind of, it's good to see, to have some type of a plan in place, but it really has to be updated as you go along. And another thing that understanding this does is that it makes you more comfortable with saying that maybe in these go-go years when I'm wanting to do more things and have more fun and travel, maybe it's okay to spend a little bit more, as long as I understand I'm probably going to need to cut that back in the slow go years, that middle phase. All right. So kind of enjoy while you can, but don't be irresponsible so much that it leaves you in a bad situation later on. But just to understand, it might make sense to do those one big time things. Like, taking the grandkids to Disney World is kind of the generic, example that you can think of. A good retirement plan is also going to address things like medical spending and what that might look like in the no-go years. So that's another thing that you want to think about. Now, what does that look like as far as addressing that? It could be looking at, a traditional long-term care policy that's going to pay like a $200 a day benefit for being in a nursing home or having home health care come to your house and take care of you. Or it could be looking at something like a life insurance plan policy that's a hybrid that has a built-in benefit that says, even while you're living, if you have to have, if you qualify, if you have to have assistance with living, long-term care expenses, you can go ahead and start pulling from that death benefit even before you die and pull from that to help pay for that. It may even involve, maybe none of those options are right for you. It may involve just when you come home and you look at your house and you say, this could probably be my long-term care policy, the way I fund my long-term care. Might be with using something like a reverse mortgage where you can get the equity out of the house to pay for something like that. Because the fact is, your kids, they're all, of course, wanting to inherit your wealth one day when you pass away, but they probably don't actually want to live in your exact house. If they inherit that house, they're going to list it on the market and they're going to sell it. So if you look at it that way, that you could use it as a way to fund long-term care if something happened by using things like a reverse mortgage or selling it and downsizing and using the cash to pay for it. That might be another thing. So, but when you're looking at this, it's good to have an idea and a plan in place, especially when you're putting together a financial plan. And then most importantly, always make sure you get an objective review of your financial situation, because it's, a retirement can last many decades. It's not uncommon for somebody to live 30 years in retirement. That's 3 decades that have to be accounted for, income that has to come in to cover all your expenses throughout that time. So it's always good to get an objective review of your financial situation and have a plan in place to make sure that you are ready when you do decide to retire. Or if you're already retired right now, it's good to have an objective review of that to make sure you're making the right decisions now to keep you on that right track. And if you need any more resources to help you out with your retirement, head on over to retirementplanningmadeeasy.com. We have a free guide there called the Essential Step-by-Step Retirement Guide. Actually, will come in really handy for this topic about spending, because it actually has a template where you can actually put in your specific spending that you have right now, and spots to put in your income, what it's going to be, what your Social Security is going to be. So you can have a really good idea of, hey, am I on the right track to be able to pay my bills and have enough income? And have I saved enough that I can pull from this portfolio and last the rest of my life with it? So head on over there, check that out. That's all I got for you for today. I'll see you guys on the next video.